Hey everybody, welcome to Season 3 of Song Revolution. Get ready to ramp up your songwriting. Hey everybody, John here. Welcome to Season 3 of Song Revolution. We've been bringing you this podcast since 2017, over 200 episodes. There's some great interviews in the archives, a lot of great teaching. I've had people like Bear Reinhardt of Need to Breathe. We've had Meredith Andrews. I've had Kim Walker-Smith. I had Carrie Job herself, Miss Worship, and she wore a trucker hat. So go check out that episode. I'll never let her forget it. But anyway, there are a lot of great interviews and episodes back in the archive. So go back and check that out and all the wonderful resources we have for you over at NashvilleChristianSongwriters.com. I love bringing you the show because we exist to empower you to fulfill your passionate call to write and to sing for Jesus, to write and record and release your music. You know, it's a weird time that we live in. It's kind of a two-edged sword because it's like the best of times and the worst of times, because you can write a song and release it in the next 10 minutes. It might go viral. It may get no attention whatsoever, but the whole music process has really been democratized because you have in your cell phone or in your computer everything that we used to have in companies that had 30 or 40 or 50 people back in the day when I was with Integrity Music, and prior to that with Star Song Media. It took a lot of people, and the whole thing, because of digitalization, has just been reduced to the palm of your hand. And so today we're going to be talking this whole month, if you're following along with the NCS 2025 Songwriting Challenge, where we're helping you add one new skill per month. If you're following along, I hope you are. You can download that PDF in the show notes. I hope you are. We're going to help you this year. Man, imagine where you're going to be in a year if you follow along. But anyway, so we're going to, this is February, and our theme for this month is music production. And we're already deep into it. And today I've got a wonderful guest who is part of our NCS collective. He is a wonderful producer. He has quite the resume. He signed a developmental deal with Centricity Music at 18 years old and had a number of years working with our dear friends over at Centricity, and they poured into him. He had some great radio hits and eventually felt like God was calling him out to be an independent artist and producer. He's a wonderful coach for us, a dear friend, and I want to introduce you, if you haven't already, come to know the inimitable, young, and very talented Coby James. Hey, Coby.
Hey, I'm inevitable. I love it.
Inimitable.
Inimitable.
No, I mean, it's inevitable that you're inimitable.
I've never heard inimitable. That's a new one for me.
That means nobody can imitate you.
I like that.
You're one of a kind.
I'm adding that to my vocabulary.
You are that. So,
I like that one.
Hey, thanks for being here. I wanted to have you on the show because you're one of our producers. You're part of our cadre of music producers. You co-write with me and with some of our other clients. You produce, you coach with us, and you're part of our NCS collective, which is so awesome. Mm-hmm. And so we love, Centricity's loss was our gain. So we love having you around. It's so much fun. But I thought it'd be great to have you on because you have a home studio.
I do.
And so today's topic is basically home recording. Let me give you one more little setup. A number of years back, we put out a lot of free material, and I put out 7 different videos, and they were like, one was like finding killer hooks, one was developing melodies, one was, I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
But the one that did that got the most hits was home recording.
Interesting.
You know, I think it's just kind of indicative of the age we're in. Like I was saying in the introduction, what it used to take 30 to 50 people do in our companies back before digital, we now hold it. You have GarageBand on your phone. You have everything. So anyway, so that I thought that was very interesting. You're quite advanced as a producer, but it's still the same process, right?
It is, absolutely.
Well, I want to get into that in the second half of the show. Why don't we step back for just a minute and kind of talk about your last few years and what that's been, and maybe how you came to know that production was such a huge part of what you want to do in your life.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. I started music production when I was 14. So probably 13 on like GarageBand, which I don't count, but we can count it if you want. But like I just was messing around on GarageBand and showing my parents these songs I was making, and they weren't very good. But I loved it. I just loved bringing something to life and being able to play it on my phone. I just thought it was super cool. And so my dad helped me with we got this really old Mac Mini that we found, I guess, on eBay or something. And it was all I needed to really get what I needed to get done. And so we got a production software on there that my guitar teacher used at the time. He was also kind of a producer for my church and stuff. And so he showed me the basics, kind of showed me the ropes, and was like, this is how you record. This is how you stop recording. And and that was pretty much I just kind of was off the chain, just here we go. Let's just see what we can do. And I recorded an album. I wrote 12 songs and recorded them all on my own when I was 15. And that was when I knew I had the bug. It was over for me. And for me, it was always songwriting, yes, but also production. They went hand in hand for me. And I think for a lot of people they do, and for some people they don't. For some people they're strictly songwriters, and some people they're strictly producers. Some people do both. And for me, it's when I envision a song, I hear the production around.
You just hear the whole thing. You just know you hear the finished product.
Exactly. And so that was kind of my early years up until probably 16 years old. After I turned 16, I ended up getting connected with some people here in town. I got a manager and came to Nashville on my first trip and stayed with a producer, a dear friend of mine who I haven't been able to see lately because he's been so successful. He's been busy. But his name was David Spencer. He was an amazing guy. He's done some amazing songs. He did In Jesus' Name for Katie Nicole. He's really had a moment, and I'm so happy for him. And but I would stay in his vocal booth and sleep on an air mattress. And we would
in the vocal booth.
In the vocal booth. And we would produce these songs together. So I wasn't necessarily behind the rig. He was, and he was producing and doing the thing. But I got to firsthand watch as a pro who's been doing it for, I think at that point, he'd been doing it for 12 years or something. I got to watch him do it. And that really showed me tips and secrets that I didn't know before. I was like, oh, this is how you use compressors. Oh, this is how you use gang vocals. And so that just really helped me grow as a producer, was just watching. And so that was huge. And then got signed to Centricity around 18. So from 16 to 17, making music, 18, signed. And that was when COVID happened. It was 2020.
Of course, right?
Great timing.
The biggest break of your life.
Oh, great timing.
You get signed to the hottest label, Lauren Daigle, etc.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
I was super pumped. So it was kind of everything breaks were hit, and it was just and I was like, all right, well, what does this mean, And so for the next 3 years, it was writing, it was working with producers in town, I co-produced a little bit, and I always produced, but not to the level that I wanted to yet. And not to the level that I could probably put stuff out yet. I could get away with it some, but it wasn't I'm a Nashville producer. And then slowly over time, as I was signed, I just felt like I kind of started to level up slowly, working with more people, seeing more things. That leveled me up slowly with enough experience to where I was able to kind of start doing it on my own. Once I got to that point where I felt like, I think I could put a song out on my own. I think I can do this. I feel confident now. It felt like the right time. I've been with Centricity for 3 years. And it just felt like we had done it all. We had done what we tried it all, And I think it was time for me. I did a lot of prayer about it. I talked to she was my girlfriend at the time, but she's my wife now. I talked to her a lot about it.
Shout out to Ashlyn.
I know. And it just felt like that was where the Lord was calling me. I felt like he had something for me in the independent world, and I didn't know what that was. I didn't necessarily think I was going to be a producer. I didn't think that I was going to be a crazy successful artist. I just kind of leapt with faith and just was like, we'll see what happens. And I'm hopeful. And it was scary.
It's great. And we've been keeping you busy ever since, I think. We're constantly feeding you production and co-writing and working with you on that stuff. So Why home production? Why have I've been over to your place. I'm going to go and do a vocal later today if I'm in good voice today. But if I'm in good voice today, I'm going to come over and sing a song. But so why have a studio in, you have a condo, beautiful place. Yeah. It's a small bedroom. It's like maybe 10 by 10 or something. And so
like that.
Why home and not go rent a studio somewhere?
Well, there's a couple reasons why. I mean, the home studio game has changed so much in the last 20 years. 20 years ago, I mean, it was pretty rough. I mean, in 2000, to have a real record produced, if you're John Mayer and you want a record produced, you're going to go somewhere. It's just going to happen. And, you're not able to just be a producer. You're not able to, go on YouTube and figure out how to do everything because,
it didn't exist.
It didn't exist.
Yeah.
There's no information out there other than certain books. And those books are probably from the 1980s and they're all on analog equipment.
Right.
So there was nothing. And then over time, slowly, we got more gear. There's more things we could use. The Mac got to be really powerful.
Right.
At first, it wasn't powerful to really, do that kind of stuff. Then it became powerful, and you started getting stuff like Logic. Like those are production softwares that like you're able to use to record music.
And Logic is like the step up. It's like the Lexus to the Toyota.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's still an Apple product.
Yeah.
It's just you've got GarageBand and then for a pro, you've got Logic.
Yep.
Is it still Logic Pro 10X?
Honestly, I don't know because I don't use it.
You don't use it? Oh, okay.
But to say if you are a GarageBand user, I think it translates really well. I think the graphics are very similar. I think it has a really nice. So that is really big. And so, then getting into now we're in 2025. You can do high level production in a bedroom if you want. Mm-hmm. There is validity to having a studio because you can bring in bands. You can do live drums. There's a sound and there's a vibe to a large studio that there's still validity for it. But for the kid who can't afford production or can't, do that kind of stuff, having a home studio I think you could do for a minimal budget, could save you a lot of money, time, and you can learn this stuff yourself now.
So are you old enough to remember when Alanis Morissette did Jagged Little Pill?
Yeah.
And that was like the first record that anybody heard of somebody recording in their bedroom.
Yep.
Do you remember that?
That's so true.
And it was like, wow, that just blew our minds. And now it's like, well, yeah, whatever,
Yeah. Like 50% to 80% are just, in random studios and some are technically bedrooms in houses,
There are thousands of them. I mean, we're sitting here in a new studio. This is our podcast studio, but we have a state-of-the-art. It's not huge, but we tracked a band back there. It's pretty nice in the back of our studios here. But I bet there are 1,000 home studios within 4 miles of here. I mean, there's just such a massive proliferation of them.
Oh, you could throw a rock and hit a house with a home studio in it. I mean, but to be fair, a home studio could classify as a Mac and a microphone and a little interface. And there's your home studio.
Wow. Talk us through for just a minute as we wrap up this first segment. Talk a little bit about the basic gear.
Yeah.
I mean, 3
absolutely.
minutes. What do you have to have? You said a microphone and a Mac.
I mean, seriously, if you get a Mac or you can do Windows as well, but I mean, Mac is kind of the standard in music production. You can absolutely use a Windows computer, but I would do that.
If you're dumb.
If you're kind of like a loser, if you want your lunch money stolen, I'd go Windows. But
if you're going to be an accountant. Okay, fine.
Okay, count your numbers. So I would get a computer, preferably a Mac, just for user-friendly purposes, and then you need a recording software which can run you anywhere from $150 to $500.
Not bad. Not bad.
But think about this: getting a song produced can range anywhere from $1,000 to $5,000.
Easy.
Or if you're signed, $7,000. So if you're thinking about, I want to make music, quality music, and want to do it on a budget, you're doing this once. This is one payment, whereas you're getting, you have to keep paying to get songs produced. Right. It's just part of it. And so there is a lot of like that involved. So you get music software. There's a bazillion to pick from. I use Studio One, which no one's ever heard of. But it's like I guess it's big in the UK. That's what they say. I haven't been, but I've heard.
You're so UK.
I'm so British.
Hello, I'm gonna use Studio One.
Studio.
I can't even
Studio
say
One.
Studio.
That's
like Cujo.
Yeah, literally. That's what I use. And so it's just what you learn. They all do the same things. They have like a few minor differences. And then you need an interface of some kind. So industry standard is the Apollo Twin. That's the industry standard. They're probably like $800, but they also have like Focusrites. Those are like $100.
Yeah,
so
that's what I have.
There's ranges, and they do different things, but when you're starting, you'll never know the difference.
Right,
So you know what I mean?
right.
It's like get a Focusrite. And then for a mic, I mean, I am a huge fan of the Slate because it's so versatile as a home studio person.
How do you spell that?
Slate, Slate.
Okay, like it sounds.
Yep.
Okay.
And so it's really cool because it's an emulation mic. So it emulates other microphones that exist. So say you want the Sony, whatever, it does that. Or it does the Neumann, whatever. So it's kind of cool if you're at a home studio and you don't have a ton of money for gear and to have 15 billion mics. Now, I will say, the regular mics do sound probably better. I mean, it's just what comes with it. If you're a jack of all trades, you're a master of none. But, nonetheless, it's awesome. And I have a really good vocal chain set up for it. And that is all you need to get started. And a mic cable.
Right. A few cables, a little electricity.
Yeah.
You can't
Wi-Fi would be big.
That would be great. Yeah, that would be kind of important. Well, all right. Well, let's take a quick break. And when we come back, what I'd like to dig into is maybe the process of how you actually start a song, how you layer sounds and what you're going for and how all that really comes together. And I'm going to share why I hate gear and why I don't like to be in the studio, and why EQing snare drums is the bane of my existence.
Okay, I'm excited to hear that.
We'll be right back. What would it feel like to have 52 weeks of access to the right people in Nashville? People who've been making music for decades. People who can answer every question that you have about what pro-level music making is all about. Well, you can get that and more by joining NCS Community. Our community is a group of worldwide dedicated Christian songwriters who want what you want, to glorify God with your gifts and to get your music out there. I hope that you'll consider joining NCS Community today. Hey guys, we're back with producer, songwriter, artist, coach, husband, and soon-to-be owner of a Cavapoo, Coby James. Coby, we've had fun so far, man. This has been a good podcast.
It's been amazing.
I've loved it. So what I'd like to dig into now, because our topic is modern home production tips, So we've talked about how, I'm so old, I'm old as dirt, and I bought like the first Macintosh computer, the ones that they make fish bowls out of now, where you had the floppy disk and everything, and I paid way too much money for it.
Retro.
It is so retro. It's long gone, but I've kept up with technology because I just love technology and it's kind of fun. So we talked about how the progression of all that has made it so convenient, and we talked about how you've really come to emphasize production more, and we want to put your contact into our show notes. So if anybody out there wants to contact young Meister Coby with some production stuff, actually come to us first because we get a cut. But we'll put your contact in there. And but we talked about all that, and what I'd like to get into now is the actual process describing. Where do you start? Do you start with a click track? Do you start with a guitar track? What in the world do you start with?
Yeah.
Okay, and talk through that. But as promised before the break, I do not like production work.
Okay, elaborate on that.
It is just... It's torture to me.
Yeah.
And it's like in our coaching programs when people are like, they want to be a great songwriter, but they're like, well, I went out and I bought this gear and I've got all this and I bought the top Taylor guitar, but I've never played guitar.
Doesn't matter.
And it's like, what? Don't do that, because the learning curve for some of us is just so massive.
Yeah.
And I'm a basic musician. I play chords. I'm a vocalist, so I can sing. You've worked with me, I can
carry a tune.
Even at my advanced age, I can still kind of get it. But to me, the time that I spent trying to work on production was just a waste because it was not going to be anything that I could ever really be put out there and hold my head up, right? And so we had this great, big, kick butt, wonderful studio, and the people around me know that I don't really like to spend a lot of time back there. I want to go back there and write songs, right?
Yeah.
And the lyrics and the melody, great. Then here, you go take it and you go make it wonderful because you're so much better at it. But so I don't know if that encourages or discourages anybody, but that's just my personal thing. So when the guys around me start talking about the universal audio this and the gongulator that and the 8500 whiz bang yiddy yaga, I go, I'm out of here, guys. It's like, man, I don't even want to, I just back off. It's like, I'm going to go get a coffee. So
well, I totally get that.
So, okay. All right. So with my personal preferences aside, walk us through what does it take to build a track? How do you think about it? I bring you a song or you write a song. How do you do this?
Well, first of all, I'd love to say it does take time to learn how to do it at a high level. It just does. I'm still learning, and like it takes a ton of time. And if you don't have the time to sink into it, you're just not going to get better. And you can't expect to also be recording record-worthy stuff within the first few years. You're just not going to. I mean, I would say it takes about 3 years to really even know what you're hearing. And know what plugins do, and know what you're supposed. So it takes
EQ and compressors, and just on and on. All those plugins.
So much time, and dedication. So when I start a song, I mean, every producer is different. Everybody has a different flow. Everybody has a different vibe. Now, I guess what I'll do is break down my process when someone brings me a song, and I've already.
It's done.
It's done, and I haven't produced it yet. Because sometimes when you're gonna write, you'll start a track and get a demo and a vibe, and so that's its own kind of thing. But we'll go, I have a song, I want it produced. Can you produce it for me? I go, yeah, sure, I love it. So we start talking through vision. I go, send me 3 references, 3 songs that you just love and think this could sound like.
That are already out there. Known songs, artists, just on the radio.
Give me Carrie Job and give me Sabrina Carpenter and give me, whoever. Give me those things. And then I can go and say, okay, she loves this kind of music. She wants, her voice to kind of sound compressed like this. She wants, a vibe on acoustic like this. And so it gives me a good rough outline, a sketch of where to start.
Yeah.
At first you're like, if it's a piano vocal they brought me, I'm like, well, what do I do,
Yeah.
So it's really helpful to get references. From there, I kind of start building. So if it's a guitar-based song, I start on guitar. If it's a keys-based song, I start on keys. Get a rough outline of what the verse, I probably start on the chorus, what the chorus would sound like. And then from there, I start on drums immediately. I go drums. I start building out what the drum structure could sound like with that acoustic.
Let me back you up one step, because what you said, what I'm interpreting is that when you arrange a song, you think about so many measures or an intro, and then you hit the verse. There may or may not be a pre-chorus.
Yeah.
Then you hit the chorus, then there's what we call a turnaround, which could be 2 to 4 measures of whatever the intro kind of sounded like, and then you hit a second verse, another chorus, and then you might go to a bridge, and then chorus. We call that kind of like song form.
Yes. But
you're talking about how you imagine the chorus sounding, like what's the climax of this chorus, right?
Yes, that's great. So I start on the chorus because I always find it's easier to strip away and create the verses after I've already created the big moment. If I create the big moment, then I know where my finale is. And I go, okay, can't get bigger than this. And then I can go and take the acoustic part and drag it over here to the verse and say, okay, we'll have like just acoustic, just a light beat. And then I already have my destination. For me, it's easier to know where I'm going if I have that mapped out already. So then I can kind of like start over and go, okay, let's plot this out. Let's figure out where, it begins now. So that's just how I've always done it. So I kind of think of it as like a big sample sheet of like, think if when you go to paint a room, you get like a piece of paper with all the colors that are going to be in the room and the things that match with it. I'll go and send the client like that course structure. I'll say, how is this feeling? Does this feel like what your course is going to feel like? And they go, yes, I love that. Or
Nice.
no, I don't love that.
So like a sketch.
Yeah, it's a sketch.
Yeah.
It's a rough outline for them to go, I really like what you're doing. And it helps me know I'm going in the right direction. Because who wants to go map out an entire song and then be told, no, I wanted it piano based.
Yeah.
Oh,
right.
okay.
Oh,
Well,
gosh.
first of all, you should have said that. Second, and it happens. Second of all, I've wasted hours,
Right.
you know?
Right.
So it's just kind of part of it. So that's what I'll do is I'll make that big sketch. Then from there, take it apart and use the pieces I've already made to create the rest of the song. Yeah.
And so you have to at some point do what I've heard these producer engineer types talk about, getting on the grid.
Yeah.
What is that?
So the grid is every song has a BPM or beats per minute. So with a BPM, a typical one would be 120 or 70 if you're in a worship song. And that's just like the click, 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 click. And every click is a line on the grid. So you have a grid on your, the thing that you're looking at. It's a bunch of lines and a bunch of other lines. And you're then snapping everything you do to that grid. So every little line that you have, you're trying to make sure every guitar chug or every piano pluck hits on those lines because that's where the beat is. And it's going to follow with the drums when you record the drums. And so that's kind of what the grid thing is. And if anything is off by even a hair, it's very noticeable.
Yeah.
Because it's out of pocket. And vocals, that's a big part of it where, you really have to go in and kind of do surgery, like microsurgery sometimes, to make it hit in those grid lines really well, but also naturally. So it can kind of be an art in its own way of just like pocketing and making things feel good and stuff.
So you start with either a drum or a guitar or keys, kind of as the basic to get the outline, the form that we talked about a moment ago. Get it on the grid.
Yeah.
You're working, with the metronome basically and snapping it to the grid. How do you go about deciding what other instruments to add? I mean, if it's a straight ahead worship tune like Elevation or Hillsong or Bethel, you're going to probably have the basic rhythm section of drums, bass, electric guitars, maybe some acoustic and vocals. How do you, or do you ever use different instruments, and how do you decide which ones to add to a song?
That's a great question. I think that what's fun about songs and music is that there's kind of stereotypes in each genre. There's certain things that you can and can't do in certain genres. You're not going to put a banjo in a worship tune unless you're Zach Williams or
Mumford and
Crowder.
Sons. Crowder. You're going to do that. Yeah.
If you're not doing the country Christian thing, most people in Elevation, Hillsong, they're not going to do the banjo thing, which is not going to happen. So hey, I can X that off my list. Not going to do that. And what I've done a lot is after you've done music for long enough, you pick up on the tropes. You pick up on worship starts with an acoustic or piano. It has this light beat, maybe come in on the second half of the verse, a little something like that.
You do that well.
Thank you. Something very light like that. There's synthesizers maybe coming in. The pre-chorus has some chuggy electric guitar that's up high. Like down, you just know that's going to be there, and you can come up with a cool line that's fancy and fun, and do something like that. Maybe there's some other guitar parts, so you get to mess around and play with it a little bit. But there's some things that you just know are supposed to be there to help the song build. You have your tool. I think of it as like you have a tool belt, and you're just kind of like, okay, what do I want to use next? I'm going to use this. I'm going to use the electric guitar here, and then once the chorus hits. In worship specifically, big chords.
Yeah.
I mean, think about if anybody's ever played in a church band, what your parts are, right? You're playing little plucky lead lines in the verse, and you're doing big strums on the chorus.
Right. And then you've got the big contemporary Christian worship toms, right?
Like that's the thing.
You got to have it.
And so think of it like if you've ever played in a worship band, those parts came from someone in a studio coming up with that stuff. And so you've already kind of seen that if you've played in a worship band is like, the how things build, how things come with the drums, they crash on the chorus. Like those little things go a long way. If you don't have a crash going into your chorus, which is just like if you don't have that going into your chorus, it's going to feel anticlimactic. It's just not going to feel big.
Mm.
And so that's kind of how I go about figuring out what instruments I'm going to use, what I'm going to play. A lot of it's feel. A lot of it is like what feels right. But once you pick up on those tropes, the things you hear in almost every record you'll ever listen to, that's when you go, okay, I have a map. I have a road map for what I need to put down.
That's so amazing and true. So it is formula in some ways. It's not a soulless formula.
Yeah.
But it's using the tools within the genre that you want to be in.
Yep.
Like you mentioned the banjo, if you're doing a Zach Williams, country Christian roots thing, then maybe it has a moment. But in a Bethel Hillsong version, probably not. So what would you say for someone who is, just beginning? Maybe they're trying to figure out how to put together their home studio. Are there any resources that you can think of now, these years later, when you didn't have them? But would you go to YouTube? Where would you go?
Yeah.
Where would you start?
There's a couple places I would definitely start. I mean, YouTube is a vast library of just like all kinds of music production tips and tricks and what plugins to get, but it can be overwhelming. So another place I would go is Reddit. It's a really cool place where you can like just ask questions and people will answer. And I'm sure someone's already asked your question if you have. Like, I mean, you're not the first person to ask what software should I use.
Right.
So there's probably out there, and there's some great people who've given great advice, but you can also just ask questions on it. And there's like kind of like Facebook groups and stuff too, but I would say Reddit would be the best place to just ask questions to the music community and say, what should I use? I'm starting out, blah, blah, blah.
That's good.
People can really help with that. YouTube, I would say again, I can't emphasize enough, is such a good tool.
It's amazing, isn't it?
I mean, you can learn so much from it. I mean, you can learn which plugins you want. Plugins are huge. And for those who don't understand what plugins are, they're just like, when you see a studio and you see all those boxes of like things stacked on each other, and those are typically compressors or EQs or something like that. They have digital versions of those that are just in your computer, and you drag them on your track and drop them, and there's a compressor. So there's a bazillion, and they can be overwhelming, but you do need them. And so figuring out which ones are best for you, what's going to fit your vibe, that's all good for YouTube. I'm sure there's 50 top 10 plugins to buy as a new producer videos.
That's awesome. My favorite is a defibrillator.
I love that.
I'd say it's a good one.
A defibrillator?
Yeah, a defibrillator.
Yeah, inhalers are good too.
We use that around here a lot because I have a heart attack every day because of all this gear stuff.
I love it.
Well, Coby, this has been fantastic. And I know we've barely scratched the surface on what home production is, but maybe these insights will help those who are tuning in today to really at least begin to know where to go, where to start.
Yeah.
And to start figuring this out. Although I highly recommend that you don't. I just think it's a big mistake to go and... No, I'm kidding. It's great. I know that a lot of people want to do it, and it's great. And if you're geared toward that, no pun intended, that's wonderful. But in the meantime, don't produce bad songs.
Ooh.
Tune into that's a whole other topic, isn't it?
But that's so good. That's so good. I mean, there's so much to say about that.
Right?
Because, I've probably written... I don't even know, 400 songs now. I'm probably at, I don't know, something like that at this point. And there's just so many that weren't worth recording.
Right.
So many.
Other than to learn from it, I guess. You learn. Yeah.
But I would say maybe a lot of songs are worth a vocal acoustic demo. And that's how you know if it's good or not, let some people hear it and stuff. But most songs are worth that. Every now and then you find the one that's like, we got to take this all the way.
Yeah, exactly.
But there's so many mediocre songs that are recorded really well.
So I grew up at the knee of Bill and Gloria Gaither. And one of the things that I learned way back was if you can't sing, if a song that you sing a cappella doesn't move you, then it probably ain't going to move you if you go produce it.
That's a good
one.
The
thing about production is it brings out the flaws in a song. It doesn't make it better.
Yep.
So, well, Coby, this has been interesting. I'm going to kind of wrap it up here. I do want to congratulate you. We're working together on some production, and we co-wrote, you and Anya Lee and we wrote a song called Back Again, and it debuted this week as number 5 on a curated Apple podcast called What's New in Gospel Music.
There you go.
Yes, sir. That's great. So congratulations to you. The production is amazing. amazing. It's one of my favorite ever.
So glad.
It's a great song, though. I mean, we wrote a smash hit for Anya. Congratulations, Anya. She's on our NCS Collective, as is Coby. So thanks for being here today, buddy.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Well, you guys, this is Music Production Month. We're already off to a great start. We have a couple more episodes this month for you. Go ahead and download the NCS 2025 Songwriting Challenge Guide. Follow along. Tune into the podcast. We offer free monthly training sessions. We were doing the first Wednesday. We switched to the first Monday now for who knows why, but we want to bring you wonderful teaching, just pour and pour and pour into your life so that you can fulfill your calling as a dedicated Christian songwriter and artist and maybe producer. God help ya. But anyway, from our heart to yours, God bless, and we'll see you next week on Song Revolution. Thanks for joining us on today's show. If you got some value, please help us share the love. Leave a like and a share and a good review. Be sure to check out everything that we have to offer you at NashvilleChristianSongwriters.com. We'll see you next time.